We talk all the time about the future costs of climate change. But what if I told you you're already paying for it? Like right now, today. We're going to dig into a really fascinating economic study that puts a real present day price tag on what climate inaction is costing every single household in the US.
So that's the big question, right? What is this hidden price? This isn't some abstract problem for our grandkids to solve. Nope, this is about actual money leaving your wallet, right now, in ways you might not even realize. This is the bill that has already arrived.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we are going to reveal that hidden price tag. Then we'll follow the money and see where it's all going. After that, we'll look at why this burden isn't shared equally. And finally, we'll explore this really powerful new way of thinking about it as a tax of inaction. Sound good? Let's jump in. All right, first up, your annual climate bill. The numbers we're looking at today come straight from a working paper by the National Bureau of Economic Research. And what these researchers wanted to do was simple. Put a hard, concrete number on the costs we're already dealing with. So they dug into a mountain of data. We're talking everything from insurance claims and energy bills to government disaster spending and even health risks. And the key thing to remember is they weren't trying to predict the future. They were calculating the costs we have already paid in just the last few years because of the climate changes we've already seen. And this is the number they came up with, somewhere between $400 and $900. Now, why the range? Well, the researchers used different models, right? Some are more conservative, some are less, when it comes to linking extreme weather directly to climate change. But honestly, no matter how you slice it, that is a chunk of change coming out of your pocket. And here's the kicker. That's not a one-time thing. That's the bill per U.S. household every single year. You add that up across the whole country, and we're talking about $50 to $110 billion a year. So the big question is, where in the world is all this money going? Okay, so let's follow that money trail. Where is that $400 to $900 actually going? Because it's not just one single thing. It's a whole bunch of different costs that are quietly stacking up. Now, this is where it gets really eye-opening. You can see right away, the biggest slices of the pie are insurance costs, both direct and indirect, and uninsured flood damage. But look down the list. There are also really significant costs tied to public health, specifically the tragic loss of life from wildfires and other disasters. You throw in government spending for cleanup and rising energy bills, and you can see how it adds up fast. And this points to one of the study's most important takeaways. We talk a lot about rising temperatures, and that's a huge deal. But the data shows that right now, the vast majority of the financial hit, the insurance hikes, the flood damage, the disaster relief, it's all coming from extreme weather events. It's the hurricanes, the wildfires, and the floods that are absolutely hammering our wallets. And you can see it so clearly here. I mean, just look at the size of those slices for insurance and flood costs. Together, they totally dwarf the direct costs we think about, like higher AC bills. What this tells us is that our biggest financial weak spot right now is our vulnerability to these increasingly intense natural disasters. So if we're all getting this annual bill, does that mean we're all paying the same price? Well, the research is crystal clear on this one. Absolutely not. Not even close. This burden is spread out very unevenly. The study really zeroes in on two critical factors that decide just how heavy your personal burden is. First, where you live, and second, how much you earn. Let's take a look at geography first. The differences from place to place are just stark. For instance, if you're a household in the Pacific Division, that's states like California, Oregon, Washington, you're looking at an average annual cost of over $1,100. Now compare that to the Middle Atlantic, where the cost is less than half that, around $500. So where you live has a huge impact on the size of your climate bill. But you know what? The inequality gets even deeper when we start talking about income. This chart right here is incredibly telling. It's not showing the cost in raw dollars, but as a percentage of a family's income. And look, for the lowest income families, this annual bill just eats up a much bigger slice of their budget compared to the highest income families. So what that means is the burden is regressive. It's falling hardest on the very people who can least afford it. The authors of the paper really just nail it with this quote. The costs are regressive, hitting low-income folks harder, and they're regionally concentrated, creating these hot spots of financial pain in certain parts of the country. It's the perfect summary. So all of this brings us to our final section, and it's a really powerful way to reframe this whole conversation. The studies suggest we should think about all these costs not just as random expenses, but as a type of tax. They call it the implicit carbon cost. Now, this isn't a tax passed by Congress. It's a price that's being imposed on us by nature. It's basically the sum total of all those very real costs we've been talking about, the higher insurance, the bigger energy bills, the health risks, the disaster cleanup, that we are all paying right now. So, what does this tax of inaction actually work out to? Well, they calculated it. Right now, on average, U.S. households are effectively paying $44 for every single ton of carbon dioxide that gets emitted. You can think of it like a hidden price tag on pollution that we're all paying for through all these real-world damages.
But, and this is the most important difference, a well-designed climate policy like a carbon tax could be made fair. Maybe you'd give the money back to households. This tax of inaction, though, it does the exact opposite. It's chaotic, it's unpredictable, and its burden falls hardest on the most vulnerable people, those in high-risk areas and those with lower incomes.
So when you boil it all down, the debate really isn't about whether we should pay a price for carbon emissions. The data here makes it incredibly clear. We already are. We are all paying a messy, unfair, and regressive price for climate inaction every single year. So the real question this research leaves us with is this the price we want to keep paying?